Hi, this is Terry Farrell, Dax from Deep Space Nine, and welcome to Random Trek.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brennan Marr. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator. And I just realized I began doing the introduction to my other podcast, Page Turners They Were Not. So allow me to do the proper Star Trek introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to Random Trek. I am your faithful commander, Brennan the Mystical Marr. Our intrepid captain is stuck in the holodeck right now, so it's up to me to guide the ship today. And we are going to be taking a look at what is often considered one of the best episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation, one of the best episodes of Star Trek, period, and one of the great episodes of television of all time. We are looking at Season 3, Episode 15, Yesterday's Enterprise. But I am not alone. I'm joined by friend of the show. I forget what rank we have chosen to give him.
I think maybe was it ambassador?
Ambassador. It's Ambassador Justin Toner. Hey,
Hey,
Justin,
brother.
welcome back.
It's good to be back. It's been a while.
Yeah, and I'm excited to have you join me for this incredible episode of Star Trek.
Oh yeah, this is a big one.
Yeah.
I mean, this episode is a very popular, beloved episode. Like you said, not just for TNG, but in Star Trek as a whole. And an episode that, while structurally it seemed like it was just like a one-off thing, what happens in this episode ended up having long-lasting repercussions for the crew of the not just the crew of the Enterprise, but the Star Trek timeline as a whole, because of the alternate Picard decision to allow the other Tashiar to go back in time, and the other who was created as a result of that, as we found out much later, and that character's impact on Star Trek history. So this episode ended up being a major episode in the long run, overall.
Yes, absolutely. So, to give it a bit of perspective, this is the middle of season 3
Mm-hmm.
of Star Trek The Next Generation. It is generally agreed upon by most fans that seasons 1 and 2 of The Next Generation were rather weak, and maybe not the best beginning to a new Star Trek show. There were some good episodes in those first 2 seasons.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
But they were few and far between.
Yeah.
Season 3 seemed to take it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, the consensus among fans is that season 3 is where the Next Generation found its groove and really became a good show. I mean,
Yes.
just in the season alone, there's a lot of very memorable episodes.
Very much.
And of course, how the season ends with Best of Both Worlds was a seminal, game-changing thing for Star Trek.
Yes.
Put Next Gen's popularity way into the stratosphere.
Yes. Now, prior to this episode, there were some great episodes in season 3 up to this point. Such as Who Watches the Watchers, The Enemy, and The Defector. Great episodes.
Yeah.
This one took it to another level. And Star Trek The Next Generation leveled up, so to speak. So to give a sort of a brief plot synopsis, the Enterprise D is investigating a space anomaly, as they do, and they're scanning it when suddenly another ship comes through. And believe it or not, it's the Enterprise C. Not a starship that we know much about at this point. They emerge from the singularity, and suddenly everything changes. The uniforms on the Enterprise D, the lighting on the ship is darker. There's more people. Everyone looks a little bit more wary of enemy. And turns out that the Enterprise C coming back in time,
Or forward in
or
time, that is.
forward in time, yes, by 22 years, changed the course of history. And we learned that the Enterprise C had been defending the Klingon outpost of Narendra 3 from the Romulans. Now, even though there had been a peace treaty in 2293 at Kitchener, there was still tension between the Federation and the Klingons.
Mm-hmm.
But the Enterprise C making a heroic last stand, which, at least according to the main timeline, the ship was destroyed defending Narendra. The Klingons saw this as a great act of honor, and this strengthened the relationship between the Klingon Empire and the United Federation of Planets. But because the Enterprise C ended up going forward in time, those events did not play out the way they should have, leading to, instead of the lasting peace with the Klingons, 22 years of war with the Klingons. Now, Guinan, yes, Guinan,
Yes.
played, of course, by Whoopi Goldberg, senses that something is not right. Somehow, her species apparently is able to sense those kind of things, and tells Captain Picard, this isn't right, something's wrong. Now, Picard has learned to trust Guinan's intuition, but there's some interesting things going on. A character that ended up in this timeline not being killed off was none other than Tasha Yar.
Mm-hmm.
And Picard realizes that if they send the Enterprise C back, the remaining crew, and there's only a few left, of the Enterprise C would not stand a chance against the Romulans and would most likely be destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And Tasha Yar, who learns from Guinan what happened to her in the main timeline, that she died a senseless death.
Mm-hmm.
As we, of course, remember in season 1, it was rather shocking.
Yeah.
One of the main characters killed off in the season. Killed by an evil creature, Arnis, for no reason other than he felt like it. So Tasha realizes that if she is meant to die, she wants her death to have meaning, and volunteers to go with the Enterprise C into the past, most likely to her death. But of course, later we learn doesn't quite happen.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other things going on here. in the episode, but eventually the Enterprise C goes back and everything is restored the way it should be. Or so we think at the time.
Mhm.
And that is pretty much the episode. Justin, as far as like, this is yet again, this is one of the things Star Trek likes to do. These time travel, alternate timelines. Do you enjoy that kind of storytelling?
I enjoy it when it's done right, and yesterday's Enterprise does it very well. It's one of the better, it's one of the best ones. Um, because of it really takes the time to go over the implications about how um how one moment in history can be so impactful when you don't realize it because when they realize that the Enterprise C coming forward and not being able to do what it was supposed to do, because even though the ship was defeated by the Romulan attack force, it's held off the Romulans long enough to prevent the Klingon outpost from falling and therefore saving Klingon lives. And it allowed reinforcements to appear, and the Romulans ended up having to withdraw because of the Enterprise C's sacrifice. As it turned out, the Enterprise C wasn't destroyed, and they find out later that some people did survive, uh, including the alternate timelines version of Tasha, um,
Yes.
which led to her giving birth to a half Romulan daughter named Sela, who became a very important character later on in the
Yes.
series
And
and in Star Trek as a whole.
I do like the B canon of her being the Empress of the Romulan Empire. I like that idea.
Mhm.
We'll see if that ever actually happens.
Yeah, the Star Trek Online game has used Sela a lot
Mm-hmm.
in the game's lore to a pretty good effect. She's had a very
Yeah.
interesting character arc
In
in the
fact,
game.
Sela comes back in one of the best two-part episodes of Star Trek
Hmm.
in Redemption Parts 1 and 2,
Yeah, that's
and
when.
several other stories as well.
Mhm. Yeah, that's when Picard and them find out about her, and she reveals, that she's that the Tasha from the alternate timeline was her mother. Um, but she is very bitter about her mother and about towards humans in general, which is why she's very loyal to the Romulans instead.
Mhm.
But anyway,
Yes.
that's a whole that's a whole nother story. But um, so because of what them not being there, the outpost falls and history changes, and there, as we mentioned, the relationship between the Klingons and the Federation goes bad and leads to a war that's been going on for 20 years in the new timeline, as we find out. And not only that, but the Federation is losing it. And um, Picard reveals to Captain Garrett of the Enterprise C that if the way things are going, the Federation is going to have no choice but to surrender to the Klingons and lose because it's going that badly for them. So that helps spurs Picard's decision to help the Enterprise C go back in time
Mm-hmm.
and fulfill its mission to hopefully change things back to the way they were, because that timeline is not good, and it realizes that if history changes, then it can stop the war from happening. Um, and there's a couple other neat little things like we get the introduced to that we find out that the captain of the Enterprise C uh, is Rachel Garrett, who's
Yes.
the first ever female captain, and not only that female captain, but of a version of the Enterprise, which is a cool little history nugget. And you know, there's a lot of debate about what to do during the episode, and at the same time, Tasha develops this uh, relationship with one of the Enterprise C officers.
Yeah, Richard
Um,
Castillo.
yeah, Lieutenant Castillo, played by uh, well-known character actor Christopher McDonald, who most people would know as Shooter McGavin from Happy Gilmore.
Yes.
Um, and so they start to develop romantic feelings for each other. Although she's working with him to help repair the Enterprise C so it can be able to be in good enough condition to go back. And of course, Klingons keep showing up and attacking, which causes complications.
hmm
And then the biggest complication occurs when, during one of the Klingon attacks, Captain Garrett gets killed,
Yes.
which is not supposed to happen. She went down with the ship in the original timeline. So Castillo is the highest ranking officer left alive. So he has to take command of the ship when it's ready to go back in time, which is one of the reasons why, along with finding out from Guinan what happened to her in the original timeline, spurs Tasha to go ask Picard to let her go with the Enterprise C and help them
hmm
fulfill their mission. Because she feels that with her future knowledge and experience, she can help give the Enterprise C a better fighting chance
hmm
now that, the captain isn't there.
Yeah.
Because it's not that, it's like Lieutenant Castillo, it's like he's just a lieutenant and he's being asked to take command of the ship. It's like he's never been in command before. So, and he's being asked to go into a battle, a battle that they know that they're not going to win.
Yeah. It's the
That's the
losing
other thing too that
situation.
weighs on alternate Picard, is that he knows that by doing this, he's sending Castillo and the other surviving officers basically to their deaths, is what they assume.
hmm
This is a suicide mission, but their 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 deaths will bring about a better timeline, a better future.
hmm
So there's a lot he has to weigh in his decision to um, uh, have the ship go back in time to where it belongs.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you
And
mentioned,
and the other thing is just
oh,
seeing how
go
just how
ahead.
different things are because of the timeline changes. Um, you know, Worf and Troy are not on the ship;
Ah,
they're
yes.
gone, and Tasha is alive. Wesley is a full officer, and other than that, the crew that we know is mostly there. But you also notice differences in personality because of the changes in the timeline.
Yeah,
It's
everyone's a
like,
little bit more grumpy in this one.
yeah, Riker's definitely got a bit of more of an attitude. Um, and there's some really great scenes, especially where Guinan has to convince Picard that the timeline has changed and that that the Enterprise C has to go back in order to put things back the way they're supposed to be. And he eventually realizes that she's right. And also the scene where Tasha goes to Picard and asks to have permission to go to the Enterprise C, and him making the very faithful decision to allow her to do that, which, as we talked about, has such long-lasting implications, allowing her to do that when she wasn't supposed to be on that ship in the first place. Um, so there's so much good character work in this episode and making understand the stakes involved, and I think that's one of the reasons why this episode is so good
Yeah,
and so popular.
I agree. Now it's interesting as far as the characters here. because you mentioned a few of them. Um, Controversial opinion, I don't think in season one, and I think there's a lot of fans who agree, I don't think Tasha Yar was a great character in season one. I think she was underwritten. I think that
Yeah,
they really didn't know what to do with the character.
yeah. I mean, the only memorable storyline was when her and Data were both under the effects of
Uh,
that virus, and they
yes.
slept together,
Yes. Oh, yes.
and the implications on that on their relationship and
Mm-hmm.
on Data going forward in his journey. Um, they didn't. She didn't get a lot of focus.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we did learn things about her, like that. It's like
Where she
and they
came
did it
from. And
where she came from. That she came from a failed colony that turned basically into a hellhole,
yes.
um, and had to escape. Gangs of guys who would go around raping women. Which it's like the. It's like hearing the word rape gangs is not something you hear on Star Trek
Ugh.
very, but it's like this.
Eh.
It's like it is it. It's just pretty daring. They even it's like mention something like that. Just make you think like, oh, good Lord. Um, so she came from a very rough childhood that she escaped from before getting off that planet and eventually joining Starfleet. Um, but that was one of the reasons why Denise Crosby chose to leave the show was
Yes.
because her character was being underwritten and she didn't feel like the character that they were going to go anywhere with the character or do much anything. And so that's why she wanted out. And now, but she still enjoyed working on the show and the people involved and everything.
Oh,
It
yes.
was more about that how the her character was being used was why she chose to leave. So this not only allowed her to come back, but because of the implications of what happened, and it's like Sela, it allowed her not only come back to play Tasha, one more time and give her more of her character a better send off
Yes.
than the way that her character was killed in season one.
And she would, of course, return during the finale as well.
Right. But it also gave uh, the showrunners an excuse to have her come back as Sela,
Yes.
Tasha's daughter,
Yes.
so that she could keep, guest starring on occasion on the show,
Yeah. In
and,
fact, I would
and not
argue
have
that
to as not as Tasha.
killing her off in season one was the right move. But later they were able to bring her back in some incredible episodes
Hmm.
where she did have a lot more to do than a lot more well-written characterizations. And it's great. Now you mentioned, of course, the great Christopher McDonald
Hmm.
as Castillo, and he's at Yes, Shooter and the Gavin, and many, many, many other character roles. I always like to see it when he shows up in things. He really is very talented and a lot of fun. And also, as you say, we get to meet the captain of the Enterprise C. Rachel Garrett, played by Trisha O'Neill.
Hmm.
And
The first
I think,
proper, the first proper female Starfleet captain shown in Star Trek.
yeah, I mean, it was her and the captain
Well,
of the
well,
Saratoga.
outside the films, because there was the
Yeah,
cat. Yeah,
captain of the
you're right.
Saratoga, yeah.
There was the captain of the Saratoga in Star Trek 4. It was also a woman, but um,
Yeah,
the fact that she was also made one of the captain of one of the previous versions of the Enterprise was a cool moment, and
yeah.
now a lot of the non-canon stuff is expanded on her character and stuff like that, and
Section
uh,
31 and things like that, yeah.
yeah, the recent Section 31 movie kind of brought the character back and used her
Yeah,
um, So there's a very cool little like moment for in Trek history. Now there's also I almost forgot um, to bring this up, but there's also a very important character moment, historic moment at the beginning of this episode between Worf and
Oh,
Guinan,
that's right. Yes.
where Guinan introduces Worf to his favorite drink, prune juice,
The Warriors drink.
the warrior's drink, as he says.
Yes, that does become an important character moment
It's a very
because
important character moment that is referenced many times in the future after this episode.
and
Is Worf's love for prune juice?
and even though it's funny, the next season after this, in the episode Family, it's actually a touching
Hmm.
moment where we learn that when Worf was a kid, he didn't want any human stuff,
Hmm.
even though he was being raised by humans. And it was really neat little character moment there. It actually had some emotional weight to it.
Hmm.
But yeah, this episode introduces so many things that are going to be important. And as far as Captain Garrett, even she becomes somewhat important in the final season of Star Trek Picard, where a statue of her is destroyed by terrorists, by these,
Yeah, that was one of the little
this,
Easter eggs from season 3 of Picard. Yeah.
yeah. So we have that. And I think the actress, I believe her name is Trisha O'Neill,
Yep.
is great in this because I really get that sense of she's in command, she's in charge,
Hmm.
she wants to be in charge, and she knows exactly what she needs and what she wants, and feels like she has an air of command.
She definitely does carry herself like she's a Starfleet captain,
Yes,
and it's unfortunate that she gets killed like halfway through the episode.
unfortunately, yes.
I mean, I don't get to spend as much time as we do with her. Um, Now, one of the other things I love is the final act where a bunch of Klingon ships return again, and the Enterprise D basically has to make a last stand to hold off all the ships so that the Enterprise C can be able to go back through the rift. Um, and to playing with, this is an alternate timeline. During the fight, Riker gets killed,
Mhm.
and there's a great one of my favorite Picard moments, even though it's alternate Picard, is after Riker gets killed and the bridge is in flames and the Klingons hail them asking them to surrender, and Picard's response is that'll be the day, and then he leaps
Yes,
over, takes over the tactical, and continues to fire the weapons.
yeah, he goes all John Wayne. I mean, that's a
Yep.
John Wayne line there. And yes, that'll be the day. And also the great. Let's make sure that history remembers the name Enterprise.
Yeah, that's another great that little speech. Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
I pulled up right here. Attention all hands, as you know, we could outrun the Klingon vessels, but we must protect the Enterprise C until she enters the temporal rift, and we must succeed. Let's make sure history never forgets the name Enterprise. Picard out.
yes.
That
Now, now speaking of Enterprise, what do you think of the look of the alternate Enterprise D? The lower lighting, the differences in architecture.
is
What
it
did you
shows that it's
think?
a more military oriented ship and not like a ship of focused on exploration.
Hmm.
That it's a warship, and that adds to makes you understand how different things are. And down to the uniforms and everything, all the little
Yes,
touches. Even 10 Ford is slightly different looking. It's like um and I love how at the end of the episode, even though Guinan, of course, nobody, once the timeline resets, nobody remembers what happened. But as we see in this episode, and it's referenced many times, El-Orians are very sensitive to changes in to basically like temporal things.
Yeah.
So, which is why Guinan is able to, like, her spider sense is basically telling her, saying, "This is wrong. This is wrong. This is not, like this is not the way things are supposed to be." Um, but even though she doesn't remember what happened, she kind of has some kind of sense because at the end she sees Geordi in 10-4 and goes down and sit next to him and asks Geordi to tell her about Tasha Yar, who
Hmm.
she had never met because she came on board the ship after Tasha died
Yeah.
in season 2.
Yeah, that line actually almost got me emotional.
Yeah, it's a
When
very
he says,
touching
"Tell me
line.
about Latashiar." Um, so also, this is the first time we get to see the Enterprise C, an ambassador class. And what do you think of the look of the ambassador class starship?
The Enterprise C.
Yes.
It's a cool design. It was later revealed to be an ambassador class starship. Um, and it's kind of similar. It's kind of similar to like the Constitution class in a way,
Hmm.
and in with a little bit of Excelsior. It's got a little bit of both of that kind of architecture thrown in there, but you can kind of see how like it was like a bridge from from that to like the Galaxy class.
Yes. Yeah,
Uh,
part of what they would call what they call the Lost Era in Star Trek is the timeline that we don't really have a lot of storytelling.
yeah,
From
like the period between the
2293
end of
to
yeah, the period between the end of
the
Star
next
Trek
gen, yeah.
6 to the beginning of Next Generation, a lot of that there's a lot of stuff that happened during that time that has only been referenced
Yeah, the
and not
Enterprise
shown.
B, the Enterprise C, the
Yeah,
Comet incident with the Romulans.
yeah, there was a brief war between the Klingons and the Cardassians.
Ah, yes.
And of course, the other big moment that happened during that period was the Cardassians taking over Bajor, and
Yes.
the occupation begins, and
So
what that did to the
big
Bajor people.
events. Big
Yeah,
events.
yeah.
All right. Now what's interesting about this episode is it's about halfway through season 3. This is often ranked as one of the best episodes of the Next Generation. Later we get great episodes such as Sins of the Father,
Mhm.
Sarek, The Best of Both Worlds Part 1. We really get some amazing storytelling after this episode. And of course, much great storytelling because of this episode. The In fact, you could argue that the Klingon Civil War maybe was the person who started it. May have been those Romulans led by Sela helping the House of Duras causing trouble. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of interesting stories that come from this episode. And it really is an extraordinary moment in Star Trek history. It's great to see Tasha Yar given more wonderful writing and character development. And it's great to see Guinan actually get involved with some of the storytelling. Um, we had seen her in season 2, but this is really when she becomes like the focus of a Star Trek story. And of course, later in episodes like Time Zero, she's going to play a very important part in Star Trek. And this really is one of those moments that this defines what Star Trek is. And this came out in February of 1990. The 90s were an incredible decade for Star Trek. And this is one of them. So Let's see, Justin, any final thoughts on the episode before we move on?
Um, we covered all the important parts. I mean, this is such a well-written episode. We covered all the reasons why it's not only a memorable episode, why it's so popular, and it does a great job of taking like the best elements that Trek is can do, and and execute them well, and you know, it's about that hopeful, like trying to build a better future, which is what they try to make sure happens by changing things back to the way it was,
Yeah.
versus the other timeline where things were really bad,
Mhm.
and giving the Tashiar character a better send off than what happened in season one. To give the character a better death in a
Mhm.
sense.
It doesn't quite happen, but close enough.
And it gives better closure for that.
It does. Yes. All right. So those are our thoughts on yesterday's Enterprise. Um, our Captain did do the randomizer for next week. And next week we'll be jumping to Deep Space Nine, and the episode that he chose, or rather the randomizer chose,
Mhm.
was, I forget which season, let me look. Yeah, season 5, episode 11 of Deep Space Nine, The Darkness and the Light. Deep Space Nine, of course, is one of my favorite Star Trek shows,
Mhm.
along with Next Gen, so that should be fun. All
Yeah, that
right,
should be a good one.
that's a good one. So, Justin, where can we find you?
You could find me. I'm part of YouTube channel known as Ruxev Entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
You can find us uh, at youtube.com at Ruxev, or Ruckusev.
Mm-hmm.
We talk a lot about sports entertainment stuff. Um, I host a show where we talk about the week in professional wrestling because it's one of my favorite things. And we have shows about sports. We do live stream gaming, and also currently we started doing a book club. So once a month we have a episode where we talk about the book of the month that we're currently reading as part
Mm-hmm.
of the Discord Patreon group that's part of the channel. So um, that's where you can find me and us, and hopefully you'll check out our content.
Yeah, so you recommend it. I've been following along, and it's a
We
great
appreciate that.
channel. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you.
A lot of good friends for many years now.
Hmm.
Hard to believe, 5 years basically. It's crazy.
Hmm.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you for listening. I am your commander, Brennan Miniscalar. And as always, applause, live long and prosper, peace, and long life.